Welcome to another episode of the Project Flux podcast. Today we have a very special event that we're going to be covering, which is the Hackathon, which is going to be held at Rolls Royce's headquarters. And we're going to get the chance to speak to a few people, including the organisers and some of the people actually taking part in the hackathon. For those who don't know what a hackathon is, stay tuned because you'll get a real kind of insight into what goes on at these events and some of the amazing innovations that can happen. And it's very relevant to the whole world of artificial intelligence because a lot of the solutions being deployed and being worked up at these hackathons are involving the artificial intelligence kind of large language models that we spend a lot of time talking about. Really, really interesting stuff. Before we go on to the quick weekly pulse to tell you about some of the big news that's happened, again, just a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. There's new features released again. In our last week's newsletter, you would have seen that we did actually cover some of their new trending features that they've got. So do check out Construct AI. It really is a very invaluable tool to us now. So due to the fact that we're going to be covering the hackathon in quite a lot of detail, we're going to keep the weekly pulse quite short this week, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of really, really good stories, which you can find more of in the weekly newsletter. So how would you kind of summarize, Yoshi, the news this week? What's the big takeaway?
The big takeaway is looking at the significant impact of AI within society. And I think that comes in the form of the Nobel Prize, awarded within physics and also within chemistry. And we'll look at things like associative memory. We don't quite look at, protein folding with Demihesius is done, but all of these technologies leverage AI, and they're the ones that have won the Nobel Prize. So it's showing the impact of it, but also now the need to really turn to powering our AI compute with things like nuclear. I think they're the kind of the big things for me.
Yeah, nice link there between two of the big stories. And we did kind of slightly cover the Nobel Prize in last week's newsletter, but it was a kind of very quick summary, and we wanted to do it justice really this time. So we've got the big thing, because it is quite significant that this is really, it's another example of artificial intelligence coming more and more into the public domain and into different fields. And I think it does make people kind of sit up and take notice when you see the amount of Nobel Prize winners around the artificial intelligence world. So it's another kind of, I suppose, another kind of piece of the puzzle, if you like, that just keeps filling up the daily news almost with more and more information about artificial intelligence. So can you just summarize the story for us then?
So this story refers to the Nobel Prize in 2024 within physics, and it was awarded to John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton. And it was important because it looks at the intersection between the human mind and also, AI and computational neural networks, with a focus on associative memory. And this was actually more of John Hopfield's work in the 1980s, but he was only awarded it now in 2024. Now, associative memory is very significant, and it is where the network has the ability to store and recall memory patterns. Okay, so we know that AI is heavily focused on memory, and machine learning works off patterns even. And it's important to note that the emergence of any behavior, or in this sense, in this context, recall within memory, it relies on activation patterns within a system, within a neural network. And more specifically here, within the human brain, the neurons, or in artificial intelligence, it will be the nodes. And between those nodes and the neurons, you have lines, right? And those lines are edges within a computational neural network, and synapses or axons really, but then the synapses are the gateways to the neurons in the brain. Going back to the activation patterns and why that's so important for emergence of behavior is that neurons or nodes are either on or off. Okay, so it's in a binary state, and this is influenced by the input signals we get from the edges or the synapses. And this is because the edges in the synapses actually weight the inputs from other neurons or other nodes going to other neurons and other nodes, right? That connection. And it is the summation of that signal which determines whether or not a neuron fires in that sense, or there's an activating function within an AI model, within the model. Now, if you picture a grid, like a grid of black and white squares. Now, picture the black squares being where the neuron or the node is activated, and the white square where it's not. It's off. It's in a negative state. Now, what you can picture within a memory is a spatial mapping of that pattern of activity, because those black squares within the grid might form a certain pattern. Okay, now that pattern can then be imprinted. Okay, it can be imprinted within the brain, and the brain, or the model itself, the neural network, will imprint that within a low energy state. Okay, now that's really important. Now, it does this through adjusting the weights, in between, in terms of the end signal that you get that activates the neural network, or repeated exposure to a stimuli within a brain, for instance. So you're constantly seeing something, your brain imprints that in your brain, and it does it within this low energy state. It spatially or spatial temporally maps it over time. And then what happens is, when you then, have a new experience in the future of a very similar stimulus, or you want to recall something, or you feed data through a neural network, what it will do is it will associate that recalling signal to the imprinted memory. And that's what we mean by associative memory. Okay. And it does this by asynchronously updating every single node within that network, or every single neuron within that network. And every time it updates a neuronal node, the network itself recalculates its energy state. Now, the lower the energy state, it shows that it's going into the right direction of reaching that stored memory. Okay, so it converges into that memory state that's been imprinted, and that's what we call associative memory in that sense. Now, the really important thing about this research was that it gave rise to things like deep neural networks, backpropagation algorithms, in adjusting weights within AI models, also speech and image recognition in detecting images, facial recognition, object detection on construction sites, Siri understanding our voice, but then also generative AI models like ChatGPT. So that's the significance of this impact. But equally, like I mentioned, this happened in the 1980s, right? Why was John Hopwood only given this award? Now, I think he's one of the oldest people to actually win the award at this time, and it was because we had to understand and assess the longevity of that impact on the field, and it's given rise to all these technologies. Hence, why they've won this award
And
from
that's
John
so
Hopfield
important,
and
right? Because
Jeffrey Hinton.
these things didn't just kind of come out of thin air. And I think
Yeah,
the importance of the Nobel Prize is that it has to have that longevity, that it's
yeah,
something that has had a major impact to humanity. And that doesn't happen. Like, yes, everyone kind of thinks, oh, ChatGPT came along, but it's what actually caused that, and what was the big insights that happened over the course of the last few decades that got there. And of course, one of the people that was awarded the Nobel Prize was Geoffrey Hinton. And he's sometimes referred to, actually, I don't think he particularly likes the title, but he is referred to quite often as the godfather of AI.
yeah.
So it kind of goes to show, this goes a long way back, but it is just reward, I think, and it's for something that is fundamentally changing humanity. And now you could say, okay, there's dangers about AI, but don't forget a lot of Nobel Prize winners were to people that had a lot of work within the nuclear world. So there's no good, like we always say, it's how you make use of it. You can make use of these technologies for good or for bad, right?
Yeah, and this is it. It's like AI is no longer just a tool, which is kind of what we say to people. It's all about augmentation. But now, what the Nobel Prize does, it shows it becoming a core component of scientific progress. So it's embedded within all these different fields that we have: physics, chemistry, and it's driving the development or the progress within these fields. So it's something which is revolutionary. We can now see that manifesting in real life, as opposed to it just being a tool that we use like ChatGPT.
Yeah, I wonder if this is like the start of quite a lot, future Nobel Prize winners. I don't think this is going to be the end of people around artificial intelligence being recognised for their works in the field. I think it's incredible, and it's brought people to me saying, "Oh, I heard about these Nobel Prize winners in AI," and it's woken people up to the impact that it's having. So, as I said, lots of good information on the newsletter about that. We've got the rabbit hole. So the rabbit hole feature is a load of links to where if you want to find out more about the subject and go into, like, exactly as it says, a bit of a rabbit hole, then you can if you want to.
Yes,
So that's
yeah.
all
So
there.
on that rabbit hole as well, it shows the images of associative memory, but also Geoffrey Hinton's work within the Boltzmann machine as well,
Yeah.
and it shows a very good graph of, there's an association with an energy function within associative memory, right? And it's the idea that within our brains or within neural networks is that the memory state, the ideal memory state of what you're trying to recall has a lower energy function. It's like dropping a ball down the top of a canyon, right, and it goes down to the bottom. Your memory will eventually, or the algorithm will eventually drop down to a low energy state, which is where that memory, what you want to recall, is there, basically. So it shows a good representation of that.
Yeah, brilliant. It's also handy. The rabbit hole stuff is stuff you can dive
Mm.
into if you've got a bit more time and you want to explore this. So let's move on. As I said, we're going to keep these ones quite brief. In the tech world, we covered the quite interesting, actually, the partnership between Boston Dynamics with their robotics, but they've actually teamed up with Toyota Research Institute for their Atlas robot. Slightly different approach to some of their competitors who are bringing a lot of it in-house. They are actually saying, well, look, there's certain things that we do well and there's certain things that other people do well, so let's get the best of both worlds. I think that's quite a good, smart move, because there's my big worry about what's happening in both the AI and the robotics world is there's a lot of repeat that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people spending an awful lot of money. So I think when you see two major players like Boston Dynamics and TRI, who's the Toyota Research Institute, actually coming together, I think that's pretty good. But they're up against Tesla, they're up against Agility, they're up against Figure. So again, there's quite a few people in this space, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of companies in this space, and it's really hard to tell, which robots are more advanced than the others because
Yeah,
they put them in very different testing states, right?
yeah.
And you can look at dexterity, you can look at its movement, locomotion, its cognitive thinking tasks, its ability to conduct more complex tasks. Um, because these things are really controlled, it's hard to understand, the differences between them and the actual
Mm.
differences. I think in China they actually did a comparison. They had loads of different robots and they compared it with the Tesla robot at the time,
Yeah.
the Optimus. So it'll be good to see them. If you were to put these different variations of robots together and actually give them a test to see which one performs better. I mean, I'd watch that.
Yeah, no, and that's going to come as it. I mean, when these things become consumer level, there will be people doing that. Just like the
Yeah.
unboxings on YouTube, they'll be like, let's put these robots against each other and see what they do well. I was quite interested. I'm sure this is a phrase that's been out for a while, but they talk about large behavior models, which operate
Mm-hmm.
along the same lines as large language models. But that's the kind of the behavior that it's kind of training itself on for these robots. And the fact that similar to the large language model world, because you've got so many competitors all at this arms race, it's going to speed up the implementation. But I suppose, are you worried that maybe at the expense of safety and the expense of proper testing?
Well, I think it's harder to test, right? Because like a large
Mm,
behavior model and these things, these robots now have an embodied cognition. They have a physical body. So they're exposed to a lot more stimulus or experiences than just, a ChatGPT based large language model.
mm,
So when you are measuring a certain capability or feature, it's typically not going to be in isolation, right? You're taking the
mm,
whole body into context. So I think it's really hard then to understand the ability that it has. So you have to really drill down these tests. And like I mentioned last week, is
mm,
that not only are you assessing the performance of these robots and these other AI tools and capabilities, you have to also assess the questions that are actually being assessed against, right? Because we're
mm,
seeing some flaws in these sort of things. So I think this is where the area needs to tighten up. And if we're going to move from large language models to something which is a lot more complex, I would say, in large behavior models, I think we need to get that right.
yeah. So again, cover that. That story is all in the newsletter. If we move on to then, I think you kind of hinted at this when we were talking about the Nobel Prize story. There was
Mhm.
quite a lot going on around nuclear energy and how that can potentially help the lifeblood of AI, which is the amount of data, the amount of energy that it needs. Really nice piece in the newsletter. But do you want to kind of summarise that for the listeners?
Yeah, so we know that the biggest challenge with AI at the moment, well, in a certain sense, one of the biggest challenges is scalability and AI computing power,
Yeah.
right? Now, we know that we also want to achieve, net zero in carbon, and we want to use, clean energy sources. But it seems as though just relying on renewable energy sources like wind, solar, etc., is not going to be enough to meet the demands needed to power AI, right? Because it's growing exponentially. So big tech are now going to nuclear. So it's basically this collab we have with big tech and nuclear, which is something which is new. It's unexpected. However, it was in a lot of the strategic plans from a lot of governments across China, the UK, Russia, the US as well. So Google themselves have collaborated with Karos Power
Mm-hmm.
to bring the first small modular reactor online by 2030. Amazon is investing in X Energy, exploring partnerships with utility providers, and Microsoft are also, I think, has agreed to purchase energy from the revitalized 3 Mile Island facility. So
Yeah.
these bold moves mark a significant shift towards nuclear power. The only thing we would say is that there are hurdles, right? Safety concerns, waste management, high initial costs. And can we build and scale these effectively? The thing that I quite like is this bidirectional kind of feedback loop, right? Is that you're using nuclear to power AI capability, but equally you can use AI capability to then help you build nuclear. So within product delivery, right, you can use AI-based software to improve that. So it's a virtuous
A
cycle in
virtuous
that
circle, yeah.
sense.
I remember covering this quite a while ago. Whilst you're going to have this period of time where the energy consumption is going to go up and up, what we have to hope, and this is the kind of great promise, is that as AI becomes more and more powerful, it's going to start solving some of the energy and the sustainability issues that we have as a society. So I like to think this is short term. And you talk about 2030 and people, I mean, I don't know about you, but I certainly think, well, 2030 is just ages away, but it's not, is it? It's 5 years away. It's,
Yes,
it's, it's very, very close.
it's very close, and actually for me, and I was kind of quite detached from the government's and big tech's approach to nuclear, and I thought that it was going to be a big pivot. But I was looking at some of the plans globally, and it mentioned here that the UK plans to quadruple its nuclear generation by 2050,
Mm.
investing 300 million in
Quadruple,
advanced
wow.
nuclear full production. China
Mm.
aims to boost its nuclear capacity to 70 gigawatts by 2025, which is a lot more
Yeah.
than other countries. The big
By
disparity.
2025, did they say?
Yeah, by 20,
That's next year.
approving 11 new reactors in 2024 alone. And
Mm.
obviously, we have the Biden-Harris administration tripling global nuclear energy, but that's happening at global level by 2050. So
Mm.
there is a big push towards this direction, this trajectory. So it will have a big impact on the construction industry for sure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just moving on to the last story then, and I appreciate we're covering these very, very quickly just because
Yeah.
of the content that we're going to have from the hackathon. So please, our apologies for that, but all the information is in the newsletter. The last one was on productivity and quite a lot of noise from Perplexity. Now, listeners will know how much I love Perplexity. I think you use it a lot as well. Great
Yeah.
tool. But they've made some headlines because there's a couple of launches. They've got their internal knowledge search and spaces feature. And this is going to enable organizations basically to start using their own data within the Perplexity kind of environment, which would be amazing. So, rather than trying to find stuff on your intranet or trying to find things within your SharePoint, you can query it, but in the same way as you query with Perplexity with the citations and everything. And that's the big power of Perplexity compared to ChatGPT or Claude, is the
Yeah.
fact that you've got these amazing citations. And I recommend it pretty much every day to somebody. In fact, I put a link up the other day on LinkedIn, which said, wouldn't it be great if LLMs had the ability to cite their sources? I was like, have you checked Perplexity? Kind of, it is out there. And I know it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty good. And then the other thing, just before I get your view on this, Yoshi, was they also had a new feature that allows users to access real-time stock quotes, customizable charts, what have you. But that got them into a bit of trouble because the New York Times has issued a cease and desist letter straight away. So quite a lot going on there. And I think Perplexity is like, I think we've really got to keep our eye on what they're doing. They are raising the bar big time.
Yeah, they're raising the bar. And so I'm assuming it's some form of RAG, and it's got a search
Yeah.
facility within it. Now, this has been around for a while. A lot of companies are dealing with this, but Perplexity almost led the way in doing it effectively. Like, it was the first AI tool that I used, which was using search well. And, it was talking through a chain of thought. It was giving you the information, and it had some form of canvas interface as well, because you can edit it on pages. So they
Yeah.
are very forward thinking in this sense. The move towards, into the financial sector, I find interesting. I would never have guessed that would have happened. And it does seem very different to what they do typically, because Perplexity is quite horizontal in a sense, right? It covers everything across the internet, any sort of question you might have in any sector, any industry, any interest. And there was a question around how they were going to start to monetize, wasn't there? So the CEO,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
that's
was
going
with
to be.
Lex Fridman. So they're
Yeah.
obviously, and as I was looking at this, this might be their shift towards going into that fund by purely immersing themselves into finance. But how it plays out and how this conflict with the New York Times plays out will be one to look out for, because what it does is it's an indicator. It symbolizes that AI tech providers can't just do what they want, right? There are restrictions because then you have to kind of work around. You can't just work around the rules. You have to follow policy, follow regulations. We saw that with the EU and with Apple as well. So I think it's just a warning sign, really, to be a bit more careful and to with your product
Yeah.
roadmap, I guess.
And of course, with their real-time stock quotes and their financial feature, that's going to put them head-to-head with Google Finance. So they're not going to take
Yes.
that lying down. So again, the arms race begins, and we get more and more kind of that. Well, depends which way you look at it. For the consumer, it's great because you get things coming out faster and faster. But in terms of security, you do wonder how much it looks like they're doing stuff like this New York Times issue, and they're just doing it and seeing what happens. But
So
in
is it out
terms
now?
of,
Is it out now already?
I think the certain parts of it are definitely the Spaces, is it? Because when I went on it earlier, Spaces was there, so I was having to play with that. But the other thing is, that's not the only they've also released their Mac app, and actually ChatGPT have got their Windows app now. So again, more and more of these companies are going up against each other, trying to beat their rival, sometimes by a week. And then in terms of the monetization model, I remember hearing on the Lex Friedman podcast that they said they weren't going to launch anything until they understood how to make the experience feel natural. But then I did get an email through from Perplexity saying that, do I want to be one on the beta waiting list or trial for the ads? So they've obviously figured out how they're going to do it, and they're going to start rolling that out slowly.
Yeah,
I would imagine you'll just get sponsored answers like you do with Google. You'll get the citations, and one of the citations will be a sponsored one.
But I think if they do that, they need to make it clear that it is a sponsored citation, because we do have the problem already that people are over reliant on AI outputs. So adding sources in there which don't have a strong domain authority, to be how Google would manage their SEO over time is.
Yeah, but Google do it with that's got less and less clear as to what's an ad and what's natural search.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, I think most people got to the point they just click on the first ones. I think that's fine as long as it's relevant. You're promoting stuff that's sponsored. As long as it's relevant, the consumer doesn't really care, right? It's like the fact that they're earning some money or paying some money for it. They won't really care if it's right. What they will get mightily peed off about is if they're promoting stuff that is not relevant to the question being asked.
But I think what would be a smart thing to do then is to actually have the AI assess the sponsored information.
Yeah.
So if there is information which is coming from people who are sponsoring, right, the AI in itself, using its own, reasoning core, assess what this information is saying, say, this might not be as valid or something, it might not be as reliable or accurate or is incomplete, and to do something else. And that would then help the user discern the value from the information it's getting.
Yeah. But again, another example of how fast these things are moving. But I think that's probably all we got time for. Very, very quick kind of brief summary of the newsletter. We're going to move on now to Project Hack 23 and some of the moments from there. So we hope you enjoy it. But for now, Yoshi, have a fantastic rest of your week and see you next week. What follows is a selection of very short 5-minute interviews with some of the people who attended. We start off with Sheldon Atkinson telling us about his challenge. Then we move on to Newman, Chief Data Officer of Projecting Success. Then Andy Murray joins us, who's the chair of the Major Projects Association. And then finally, we get to speak to Martin Paver, the CEO of Projecting Success, the people behind Project Hacks 23. So here we go. Project Flux is here. We're here at Project Hack 23, where the hackathon has just started. And I'm joined by my colleague, Sheldon Atkinson. Hi, Sheldon.
Hello, everyone.
And he's just set, I think, probably the most popular challenge of the day.
It seems to have gone down quite well, yeah.
So what, 1/3 of the challengers, I think, have chosen your challenge?
Yeah, I think so. I've done the maths, and it's about 1/3.
Not bad. Yeah. So, over-delivering as normal.
We try.
Can you just explain what your challenge is?
Yeah, no worries. So my challenge is all around clerks of works reporting. So what a clerk of works effectively is a person who's hired by the client to go and visit site, to review site conditions and the contract works to make sure that it's basically in accordance with the scope and the quality as stipulated within the contract. And so at the moment, what a clerk of works does is they effectively rock up to a construction site, clipboard in hand, pen, paper, quill,
the good old-fashioned way,
abacus, all sorts, yeah. And then they take notes of what they see on site, and then they take those notes back to their desk and then input on all of the information into a Word report and then generate a PDF report off the back of that. So as you can imagine, during the course of construction work, you may have about 50 to 100 of these reports, and actually trying to find the information as and when you need it is extremely difficult. So what we're trying to do today is we're trying to augment that whole process. We've set all of the hackers here a challenge to develop an end-to-end solution where we want to collect the data, we need to store it, we want some automated reporting, and then also maybe some visualizations in there as well to kind of help streamline the way that the whole process works.
So it digitizes the whole process. So the clerk of work can go into site with an app of some kind, input the data, and automatically it will generate some kind of a report.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
That's it.
And do you reckon you can get that done in 2 days?
To be honest with you, when I set the challenge, I looked, because I've been to these hacks before, I looked at it as if maybe something that my team could achieve. So yeah, I think we can get that in 2 days. I think Sheldon's being a bit humble. He is, as he likes to remind me, the 2 times champion of the hackathon. Wow. Do you just want to tell people about what your past successes in the world of hacks? Okay, so we're going back a bit. So I think the first hack, which you were involved in, was the web scraping. Yeah. I think 9, I can't remember when it was. And then a recent hack actually in Manchester. Was that the image generation one? That's the one. Thank you. Yeah, because everyone's kind of familiar at the moment with the fact that ChatGPT can now ingest images. So we've got this multimodal approach. But this was before that was rolled out. Yeah. Sheldon cracked it before OpenAI. Well, right? I had a very strong team. Yeah. I just sprinkled the extra bit of gold. That's the way. That's what you need. You need a good team in these things. Domain expertise, we call it. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, best of luck with the hack. Brilliant. Thanks, Sheldon. Project Flux is here. We're here with Ant Newman from Projecting Success at Project Hack 23 at Rolls Royce headquarters. And thanks very much for taking out some of your time from a very, very busy day. There's loads going on there. Can you just introduce yourself to everyone at Project Flux podcast, tell them what you do and, you know, your background in artificial intelligence?
Sure. So thanks for having me as well. We're hiding in a closet for anyone who's watching. So I'm a Chief Data Officer at Projecting Success. My background is not in projects, unlike many people here. My background is in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I've been working in AI for over 20 years, pretty much doing the same thing. So everyone thinks AI is new, but really I've been applying machine learning models for over 20 years. The difference being, 20 years ago, it was very niche. There's just a handful of us, military research supercomputers. 2011, Hadoop dropping, suddenly we have cloud computing. Democratizes it, but we're still talking about the engineers. And then 2016 with GANs dropping, that launching the generative AI revolution when we have a little GAN arms race, and then just snowballed from there, hasn't it? And it's really, I think when I speak with James, I always do this arm thing about the barriers to entry. So the barrier, for anyone who's listening, I'm sticking my hand towards the camera and it's going to get closer to me. The barrier to entry was so far away, you needed the supercomputer 20 years ago, and it was the cloud computing and engineering skills. And now with ChatGPT, the OpenAI, the Claudes of this world, it's becoming accessible for all.
So the fact that we've got all these people, 150 people, whatever, in the project delivery space doing a hackathon, why is AI now in the public consciousness now? Is it because of that barrier to entry coming down, or there are other factors?
I think that's the biggest factor. It's made solutions accessible, especially with the free text analysis. We talk a lot about sentiment analysis in project delivery, and when we're collecting data, there's the numerical data, but there's also the qualitative data, and a lot of people forget the qualitative data when they're doing their analyses. Yeah, and that's the hardest bit to capture, isn't it, in some ways, because how do you actually capture the qualitative data? There's no kind of set way of capturing that. We're working through those mechanisms now at this very hack. What are the rules around that? What's the ontology? So for the less technical, that's just what are the rules around how we connect the qualitative data, how we govern it, how we use it. And most of the ways to get around that, we used to use advisory products. So we would qualitative analysis of engineers and project delivery reports. When you have like 120 plus reports, if you just have something flagging, there's discrepancies between these 2 reports, maybe just this month look at these 3. You can maybe get a 3-month early warning system before your project goes red and prevent it. So timely data. Yeah, and that's kind of the holy grail, isn't it, in terms of project delivery? Often by the time we get the insights, it's too late. The ship has sailed. And I see some of the solutions that we're looking at here, are starting to break those things down in just 2 days. So it's incredible. And have someone who's actually gone through a number of hacks in my time, I know how valuable it is, but it seems like there's been a step up from what I can see here today. So obviously the project hacks were founded by the project data analytics community. We're on number 23 now, and it's great to see how it's evolved to where it is now. But can you tell us what the next steps are and where the project hack is going and how it's evolving? Yeah, I mean, we have a real evolutionary plan for this. So I joined Projecting Success in February. This is my second hack. Last hack was really good, but I was using it to see what was done. We had challenges from Rolls Royce and from yourself from Leeds and others, and they were good challenges. But previously, hacks had kind of been standalone challenges and what was happening with the information. I noticed last time, for example, we weren't capturing the decompositions.
Mm-hmm.
So now, supported by the Project Data Analysis Coalition, which some of you may be aware, we're capturing all of the decompositions into the project brain. So, for example, just outside this door, there is 3 teams working on challenge 1. They're focusing on different aspects of it. They've all done their different decompositions, but when we're ingesting that into the graph later, anyone at the next hack who wants to understand, because at the next hack there's actually a follow-on challenge from this challenge, it's solving one problem, a cross-industry problem, bit by bit by bit, building, and they're not all solving it individually, but together we're taking out the artifacts from their decompositions and from their solutions, so they actually interconnect. So this team right here are doing a really good job on the decomposition and the dashboarding side. The team over there, for the radio listeners, I'm just pointing through a door, so even the video listeners can't see it. The team over there doing a great job on the data quality automation and auto QA.
So it's complementary. Things are complementary. And I think that's been the biggest notice that I've seen. It was a little bit more scattergun before, and now there seems to be a very serious attempt to bring everything together, like you say, in this ontology. So it's really, really encouraging.
So yeah, going forwards, this time we don't know exactly how to do the auto QA on bringing all this into the brain. So we're looking at different techniques after this hack, and by the next hack, we hope to have all of the decompositions automated. Already automated, but not just that. Once that's automated, all of the coalition are committed to, with all of their apprentices and their internal projects, using the same methodology for their projects, and it will all be going into the brain, which all of the stuff sits on top of, so everyone gets the benefit.
Yeah. So by the time we get sort of hack 24, 25, 26, you can start seeing these things come together.
Yeah. When I did my analysis to estimate, if this is a sold out hack as well, so there was, if you want to get involved in the next one, book early. Because
how can the people find out? How can they get involved with Project Hack 24?
Well, James is going to stick a little QR code for me
Absolutely.
underneath this podcast, and you can just click on that and you'll get all the information you need.
And it'll be in the show notes as well. So.
Yeah, so when I did my analysis, by Hack 24, we're still on the journey. Hack 25, we're actually getting to the point where that's the tipping point of where I always say we want to be Google, not Yahoo.
Yeah.
We don't want to be going in, having to humanly intervene in this. We want to get to the point where our algorithm means it can explode for everybody.
Amazing, really exciting. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time, Anne. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.
Hopefully you come on to the podcast for a longer form interview at some point in the future as well.
I would love to. Just, I expect my rider to be met and...
What, the purple M&Ms?
No, the brown ones removed, please.
Fine, okay, we can make that happen.
Project Flux is here.
Hi, Andy. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time at Project Hack 23. How's the day going so far, or the second day?
The second day is brilliant. I love Project Hack. And we met in Project Hack 11.
Was it 11? Wow, that's a long time ago.
The Major Projects Association has been supporting the hackathon since Project Hack 11. The Major Projects Association's ethos is around connecting people, connecting organisations, sharing their experiences, but also sharing ideas. And this is a melting pot of ideas, and we just love it. So yeah, it's all about making projects better, which is what's happening in the hack next door. And
it feels like such a good buzz this time as well. And if you take this alongside your very own Major Projects Association conference, which was about a week ago,
that's right,
over a week ago, it feels like there's a real buzz in the air about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we have an events program with topics at the request of our members. So we have a program committee that takes all the suggestions and ideas, and we put it through can we sequence them? Can we link them? Is there a priority there? And we have some principles. And one of our principles is that we don't repeat topics more than once every 2 or 3 years. It's sort of a general rule of thumb. But we've looked at AI and data analytics 3 times within 1 year, which just goes to show you how front of mind it is for everyone, but also how fast it's moving. So what we discussed a year ago as things that were happening have now happened, or new things have come in, and we're just getting our head around what that might mean for project delivery. So yes, it's moving at pace, which is why there's a buzz, I think, in the room here.
And that's what we keep saying. You can't take your foot off the gas with it because it is moving so fast. And what's the main thing people are asking for now, like MPA members, now that they've heard about artificial intelligence and you've had the conferences and what it is and what it does? Is there a slight change in what people are asking for?
I think some of the things that people are asking for remain the same. So there's often been discussions around data
Mhm.
and data access and data rights and data sharing, particularly with security. Many major projects will always have security challenges, whether it's a bit of infrastructure or depending upon the domain. So there are those things, which how can we overcome those issues? And that's not unique to major projects. I mean, that's happening
Definitely
across multiple domains. But we do know that the power of particularly large language models in terms of that pattern recognition and the generative AI in terms of what insights you can learn from things need training data. And so if we can train those models on lots of collective data, so it's not just my own, then we're going to get better insights because we're getting benefit from others, and that's sort of the MPA's purpose of helping all of us learn from each other. So we know that that's still an issue or still a challenge for organisations, and something we need to carry on talking about, carry on exploring, and looking at ways to provide better platforms for sharing data. The other one is around productivity. So we do know there are productivity challenges. So a lot of the conversations are how can we apply it to get more productive at what we're doing. And we have some members who are saying, well, actually, we know if we go down the sort of the Henry Ford route, that if we asked the existing people what we want, it would have been faster horses. So what's the major projects equivalent to the faster horses? So we need to perhaps do a leapfrogging of current practice and go to a next generation of how to do things that we've not done in the right way, not because of lack of endeavour, but because we didn't really have the data or the insights to show that there's a better way of doing things.
And that's really hard, isn't it? That's a
It is.
paradigm shift. You're asking people to totally change the way they're doing things. And even though I don't think he ever actually said that quote, from what I heard, but it is a very apt kind of comparison in terms of, we do need to change the way that we're delivering projects. And I see artificial intelligence and data analytics in the whole as an opportunity. It's the opportunity that we have to actually make that change.
Yeah, I mean, an example, and we've talked about this before, James, but in a prior role before joining the Major Project Association, I've been in projects all my career, but for a 4-year period, I worked in a client organisation. We had 4 or 5 different project methods, project frameworks across the organisation. It was a merger of different entities, and the directive from the leadership team was there should be one framework, including one project life cycle. So we had to have a standard set of investment and decision gates. And so I was asked, Andy, can you help do this? And can you sort of come up with a universal project life cycle that all the different parts of the business can agree on, and a set of gates? And so some of them had 4 gates, some of them had 7 gates, no consistency. So the question came up, which is what's the best number of gates to have? We didn't have an answer for that. And I looked at all of the academic papers and I looked at all the data within that organization in terms of delivery performance versus cost per gate and so on. And I could not find an answer. There was not the data or the insights to answer the question, what's the ideal number of gates to have in a project life cycle? We've been doing project management for 100 years in the current form, and we still don't know what's the optimum number of gates. Now, I say that, with shame, really, that we should know that answer. In terms of different contexts and so on.
Do we even know now?
So
it's still up in
what
the
we
air.
can do, and what that organisation did, was to start to record gate performance information. So you could then relate to, okay, we know how much it costs per gate. We know how many times projects get bounced at a gate, so they're not ready, so they have to go back and come again. Or the number of times, which is the worst one, the number of times where they get to a gate with no decision. Because that's actually, a rejection or an approval is a good outcome from a gate. But actually, you need to come back again because you're not ready. That's a poor gate. So the gate performance is something we can start to model, but we can also track that to how many projects that get into difficulty either through delivery or once the asset has gone into operation. And we can have that correlation then between, gate performance and project performance. And so once we start collecting that data, we can then get the insights. At the moment, we haven't. I've not found many organisations that have that data.
So even though there's a lot to be excited about within artificial intelligence, actually there's still some foundational issues we still need to resolve within the project delivery profession, aren't there? To be able to leverage that data as much as possible.
And that sort of discipline and rigour and so on. Now, before we start to sort of throw stones at ourselves or whatever, or
we are harsh on ourselves.
We're harsh on ourselves. It is explainable why it's a challenge in for that data collection in the project environment. And that organisation I just mentioned was an operational organisation, so their business wasn't projects; it was running an asset. They had a system to operate, and so they're quite rightly set up. They're governed, and their performance management is around their operations, and that's their permanent organisation. So the projects are temporary, and they're cross-cutting, and they involve multiple contractors and suppliers and so on. So that temporary nature, that cross-cutting nature, does mean we don't necessarily have the same platform for collecting the data and keeping the data in the way that we would if it was an operational system. So it is explainable, but that doesn't mean to say we should say, oh, it's hard. Therefore, don't do it. But it's hard, so we should do it.
Absolutely. There's different barriers, and we doesn't mean we say throw in the towel. Too hard a job. Actually, the artificial intelligence provides us with the opportunity to help us analyse and come to those decisions about what to do about that. So no, it's all really exciting. And thank you so much for your time. I mean, Andy, you've been on the podcast before, and hopefully we can have you on for a longer form interview.
I'll come back again.
But thank you for this quick little moment from Project Hack 23.
Thanks, James.
Project Flux is here.
Hi, Martin. Thank you so much for inviting me again to Project Hack 23, which is where we're filming from, although we are in a cupboard at this hack, so you can't feel the full buzz. But it's an amazing atmosphere out there. You must be so chuffed with how it's going today.
So it's superb. We've got 150 people. It's a sold-out event.
Yeah.
So we work with Rolls Royce, and it's a big name. A lot of people know about the company. We had 40 VIPs yesterday as well, where we're telling them about the vision. We're telling them about the power of data. And I think they all got it, really, really got it. So I feel that we've turned a corner, James.
Yeah.
So I've been at this a long time, since 2018, the first hack. And I feel that we've turned a corner now, and I think we've got the flywheel spinning at pace, and I think it's now starting to pull in more and more and more energy.
Yeah. I mean, has it taken you a bit longer than you would have liked to get to 23 to get the momentum going?
Probably 22 more than I wanted.
But I think, as you say, it's exponential, isn't it? Doesn't mean it's taken this long to get to 23 that it's going to take another 23 to go double. I think there is a real appetite now. And do you think how much of that is due to the technology improving, and how much of it is it due to the penny finally dropping with people that this is the future?
So it's a combination of all of that. Plus, as well, I think we've found the right people. So I think you found through the task force, you found through the coalition as well. So with the coalition, the task force is volunteers, it's driven by people. And with the coalition, it's supported by big organisations like Rolls Royce, Thales, United Utilities, etc. So what we're trying to do with that is to use their apprentices to move the dial. So when they work with the task force, so the task force goes and broadcasts it and raises awareness, the coalition starts to deliver all of it. I think with the coalition now, I've found the people who can put the energy in, found the way through the systems that they can get their own teams involved. I think that's the turning point, is we've now got this ecosystem that I've been trying to design for years is now fully operational. And I now think it's starting to get the energy into the flywheel that's going faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, and the thing that I've observed, and I was discussing with Ant earlier in another quick interview that we had, was that whilst in the past it was great, the hacks, but it was a bit more scattergun in terms of the challenges. It seems to be much more organised now, and you seem to be working with the end in mind. You're looking 3, 4, 5 hacks ahead, aren't you?
And so in terms of the decomposition of those problems now, we've got these things called jigsaw lids.
Yeah.
So we've got scheduling, we've got risk, we've got assurance. So as part of those jigsaw lids, we say, let's refine what we've got today, let's enhance some of those solutions, and let's start to reimagine where we want to be. So if we reimagine, that's possibly throwing away some of the sort of current practice and starting to do something completely different.
Yeah.
So once we've got that jigsaw lid, we know what we want to go after, and we probably know in terms of what sequence. So what we've got to define is that jigsaw piece. So what do we want out of it in terms of a product? So we've been doing that through the coalition product groups. So once we've got that, we can iterate through the jigsaw lid, and in 2-3 years' time, we've populated all of those jigsaw pieces with capabilities. And we've open sourced a lot. That's where we want to be.
Yeah. And that open source solution, where can people get those open source solutions?
So it's the solution center.
Yeah.
So what we've changed with this hack as well. So previously with the solutions used to come out, and my team would spend a lot of time trying to get the documentation, etc. And it used to cost me a small fortune. So I said, I'm not going to do it unless other people sort of get involved in it. And it was very difficult to do that. So we've changed the approach in this hack. So what we've got now is Miro boards where people are doing problem decomposition effectively. and they're documenting what they're doing. And they're also starting to think about the next hack challenges. So we're now starting to get the curation of the next hack.
Yeah, that's the
which
big
will come out of
challenge, I
this.
think.
So it's all the problem decomposition that goes with it. So the documentation should be much better. So I think you'll start to see the solution center going exponentially.
Yeah, fantastic.
And that's down to Ant as well. He's bringing a lot of rigor to it.
Yeah. Well, his enthusiasm was infectious. We've had them on just before. The other big change I've noticed going around, as well as the fact that this has got such great buzz, and it really is, and thank you to Rolls Royce for hosting it and everything, was that I see a lot of people utilising large language models now to help them with their solutions, sometimes helping them with their those problem decompositions or their strategy, or even with the coding. I think that's having a big impact in how fast they can spin up these solutions.
It's huge. It's huge. And some people are using Copilot. So what we're trying to encourage them to do is to use Marvin, which is a large language model. So it sits on the top of something like Claude or ChatGPT-4. So what that does, basically, it tailors it to a project delivery environment. So it's the same basic ecosystem. I try and explain it to people is that we've trained ChatGPT to speak English. And now what we do in a project delivery context is we trained it to speak with a Yorkshire dialect.
Oh, I love that. That's a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
Although no one's going to be able to understand it. It was truly a Yorkshire accent. And it'd be quite grumpy as well. No, it is really, really fantastic seeing what's happening. And I'm honoured to be a judge. So I'm looking forward to seeing the solutions coming out in the next few days, and the award ceremony, which I think is in about a week's time. So we'll try and cover that as well.
Cool. Yeah, good. Yeah. So videos should be live in the next day or two. So submissions are all finished by 5:30 today.
Cool.
And then they've got to be just topped and tailed, and in they go into the solution, into the YouTube channel. So you can watch all the YouTube videos in the next couple of days, probably.
Cool. And that's for the public as well? Anyone can see those?
So go to the Projecting Success YouTube channel and look for Hack 23. You'll see them all in there. Then once they've been judged as well, we'll stick it on LinkedIn about who's won, etc. So you can then go and have a read of the latest and greatest stuff.
Fantastic. We'll put all those links on the show notes so people can dial through to there as and when they see fit. Martin, thank you for everything you're doing. Your enthusiasm, the fact you've got this off the ground and you've got it started, it really is fantastic. And it's great to see it really get into the next level, I think.
Yeah, cool. So just watch this space as well, Joe. We're still pushing for a 1,000-person hack one day. I still want to go for it.
The day that happens will be a good day, especially if it's at the Spurs Stadium. Thanks, Martin.
Okay, cheers.
Project Flux is here.
Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.